Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. You can see from the jars on the table that I'm back on the candle lanterns. I've got lots and lots of autumnal and kind of Halloween-y candle lanterns, but I'm just coming to the point where I'm going to change them all over, and I realised I've got far fewer winter festive sort of ones. So today it's festive candle lantern making. If you hang around to the end, I'll show you a close-up of all the wintry ones I've already got, along with these new ones that we're going to make today. And obviously I'll also link down below to there are a couple of videos with other candle lanterns that I'll give you links to if you need them. I've been creating lots of green papers. This paper is actually green when it starts, which I think is really useful if you're cutting greenery, which I do quite often. So I bought this in a dollar store, and it's just lots of green paper, which I figured would be quite handy. And it is, because it means you don't have to use quite as much ink. If you start with white paper and you want fully green paper, you're going to use up a lot of your sprays and inks and paints and things. Whereas if the paper already starts green, you can create different toned greens. These are mixtures of Oxide sprays, distress spray stains, and a little bit of shimmering mica in there as well. I should have been waving these around so you can see that. So I've got some that are going to do sort of silvery greenery. I've got some that have got those little spots of shimmer going on. I've got some that are sort of full-on pine branch colour, and these are mixtures of, let's see what we mostly used. There's Mowed lawn and Evergreen Bough, distress spray stain, and I feel like I may have used peeled paint at some point as well. There is iced spruce and rustic wilderness Oxide sprays, and there's a bit of Halloweeny bubbling cauldron. I could have used one of the winter greens. There are a number of distress sprays that are specifically around Christmas colours, but that's the one that came to hand first, and I do love bubbling cauldron, so that's what I used. From that, I'm going to cut definitely quite a few of these gorgeous winter greenery dies. I might cut myself the odd Christmas tree. I might cut a tree line, but some of the jars I've already got have got the tree line. Actually, there might be a video for that. Did we do those online? Maybe. So again, check down below for links. And then what I'm thinking is I might also cut from just plain white, but then add some shimmer, maybe some rock candy glitter to those. They'll cut from plain white. So there's a big die cutting session coming up. I won't necessarily cut all these pieces of paper right away. So those are going to be decorations once we get there. I'm thinking a couple of these lanterns I might use a paper napkin on, so there's going to be a little bit of what the Germans call Servietten technique will come into this. I'm thinking maybe my mistletoe would make a nice little addition around the top, so that's a plan. But also I want to do some of my favourite sort of textured backgrounds that you've seen on some of the Halloween ones. So I've pulled out a couple of stencils that we might use with texture paste or snow paste, grit paste, Snowfall, those kinds of amazing products that have some sparkle built into the texture. Lots of plans, and I'm gonna see how fast we can get through it. I think probably one of my first tasks is going to be to gesso a couple of these lanterns, because I do love that snowy background, and add this texture so it can be drying while I do some die cuttings. So let's see. This one, a couple of these are really nice and clear and shiny, so they'd be good to keep for maybe the sparkly version. A couple of, this one's a bit cloudy, so I think I might keep that for one of the decoupage things. Yes, okay, so I'm gonna go. Ooh, it's nice and rusty around the inside there. It is on the inside though, so I can always clean that later. Gesso. Do I want full on gesso? Do I want to put some, let's have a look at my grit paste. So this is the Snowfall grit paste, which, as you can see, is not even open yet. Very exciting. I'm just wondering if I've actually got another version of this. No, I've got the Grit Pasting Crypt, which is the sort of Halloweeny version. You don't need to watch me do this. Good. So this nice sparkly stuff is going to be great through maybe a starry stencil or a snowy stencil, but I think that I do want that lovely sense of snowiness on this. So I'm going to use just a bit of, as I said, gesso. I'm going to use probably a sponge to apply it because that'll get me nice texture. I'll put a bit on the mat here, which means that I can then just kind of work it into the sponge, and then I don't want to completely cover this because obviously you want spaces for the candlelight to emerge. Gesso is probably thin enough, and I say this from experience of having done this quite a lot now, gessoing my jam jars and putting candles into them. Even if you do a solid coat of gesso, you're quite likely to have enough candlelight coming through, and it'll come through in a sort of eerie little way. But I think it's also quite nice to have that textured look, which really gives you a sort of snowfall, icy, frosty, Jack Frost kind of a look to it. So this is huge. I think this must have been a mayonnaise jar. It's mayonnaise or gherkins. Oh no, because the gherkins are really beautiful sort of decorative glass jars with panels and shaping. So yeah, I'm always on the lookout for a good candle jar. This one is very tall, so for lighting the candle you need to use what in old candle lighting terms was called a spill, also known as a wooden coffee stirrer these days, is where you're most likely to find yourself a useful candle lighting spill. No need to spend money on posh ones calling themselves special candle lighting spills. Just pick up a few extra coffee stirrers the next time you're in a coffee shop, and they do a great job of lighting candles at the bottoms of jars, which can sometimes be a tricky job. Right, so I'm making sure I go around the top of this screw top bit as well, although I'll be adding twine and things. That's where I think some of the die cuts will go. They're gonna dangle off the top of the jar. I think I want a nice solid snowiness going on at the top here, so I'm applying an extra layer of that. But as you can see, it's a very quick process. Even this, just exactly as it is a pretty magical thing to put a candle in and just let it shimmer into the room. Even as simple as a coat of a loose, soft, textured coat of gesso is going to be quite exciting to have around. Yeah, I'm going to leave that at that. I do need to rinse out this sponge. This is one of my pieces of natural sponge, and I don't want it hardening with the gesso. I want to make sure that gets rinsed before I do anything else. I'm just looking around the top of that and thinking it'd be nice to have the top a little whiter, so to distract the eye from those screw top bits. There we go. There we go. Nice. Ready for the next stages. And it just go until it makes you happy as a finish. Just having a look in the light for blank bits that might need a bit more coverage. Grand. Sponge rinsing time, and I'll be right back. I have to add the safety warning. If you can dry this with a heat tool so that you can move on to the next stage nice and quickly, but if you're using a heat tool anywhere near glass, I do recommend having safety goggles, maybe even safety gloves. You never know when a jar has maybe got a crack or a fault, and then it could all go horribly wrong and shatter in your hands if you're using a heat tool. So if that's something that worries you, don't use a heat tool. Let these dry naturally. If you are using a heat tool with them, then please, 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 safety first. watch out, because the glass will get very, very hot, is the other thing. Don't be holding it while you're doing it, because the glass will heat up. Safety first. Art, I don't want to say second. It generally matters too. Right, and on we go for the next stages. I am leaving those to do a bit of drying by themselves, and I'm gonna get some decoupage underway with these two. So I was debating about this. These are some tissues I got in local sort of pharmacy chemist shop. Love them because they've got some sort of umbelliferous seed heads in them, but at the moment I'm not that wild about the idea of the craft on the jar. That'll be a lovely rustic thing. I might save that for another time. What I'm drawn to at the moment are these white and green ones, and although they're not full-on Christmas greenery, I think those are eucalyptus. I think they're going to look lovely in a kind of white and green, subtle kind of way. So the thing with using paper napkins is you want to get rid of the additional layers, and trying to tear it apart where you've got the sealed edges can often be tricky. So one of my ways of doing it is to just rip a corner off, and then when you've torn it, it tends to be easier to find your way in to removing that. Now that is going to be a lovely thing for gel printing on, or mop-ups, beautiful sort of soft, thin tissue layer. Sometimes things are 3-ply. I don't know that this is. Sometimes you discover it when you come to the gluing stage, because as you glue it down, you realise there's another layer peeling away. At the moment, I can't, it sort of feels like there's another layer, but if there is, it doesn't seem to want to come away. I'm going to try another little rip and see if anything separates. I have got a couple of these because, as you can see, my jar is quite large. All you can do is try, and that's going to rip a bit of tissue. Oh, hello. No, I think I'm going to have to try the gluing method and see whether this has got another layer that comes away. Generally, what you'll be able to do is deal with it. So I'm going to see if one half of this will fit all the way around this jar. Oh, yes, perfect. So I am going to be able to get both these jars done with one napkin. So let's give it a snip right through the middle. For the most part, again, I'm going to try not to involve, as far as possible, the sort of how it's joined together at the edge with this texture. I mean, it's quite nice, but I don't really want it. So if I go this way up, the plants kind of look the wrong way up to me. I think this is going to be pretty though, isn't it? It's going to be really nice. There's still quite a lot of stickiness on this jar, which is helpful if you're sticking things down. And the news it's giving me is that it does seem to be a 1-ply. Sorry, I'm looking for glue as I'm talking to you. I'm going to go and find some glue to use. So you can absolutely use a plain white acrylic glue for this. What I would recommend if you do is pop some in a saucer and mix a bit of water in, because you really don't need it full strength. In fact, almost half and half water and white glue. I do have some wood glue somewhere that I could use, but I can't lay hands on it right at the moment. So the other alternative is any soft decoupage glue. Again, a slightly watery version will probably serve you well. Any old soft little craft brush. This is one of my Ikea little craft brushes. And one of the things with this, as you're going onto a round surface, is I would say don't glue the whole jar at once. So I'm going to start with about 1/3 of it with glue applied, and you only need a thin layer. We're gluing a very thin tissue to this, and then I am going to trim down and get rid of this end of the texture. I think that's still going to give me enough napkin. And I'm going to make that my starting point. There is going to be a slight overlap at some point just to make sure we are fully covered. And I don't want the bottom layer of the texture, so I'm going to let that be right at the bottom. You need a little bit of slack. Oh, what am I doing? Start where the glue starts. You're going to want a little bit of slack at the top because you need to press in to all that creasiness that's going on there. That's fine for a starting point. Now, obviously, I enjoy a little bit of extra texture from wrinkles, so I'm not terribly bothered. Let's see if this is, yeah, it is. I'm not terribly bothered about smoothing out every last crease and wrinkle. I rather like that having texture to it. In fact, sometimes I'll even encourage the texture, create deliberate extra crinkles and wrinkles. I'm going over the top because that's also giving me a seal. You can do that with a matte varnish or matte medium, unless you want a glossy finish, in which case do it with a glossy medium or a glossy varnish. But it'll just also protect that tissue in the longer run to give it a coat over the top as well. So once that is fastened, I can start to make sure that the next part has got a good layer of glue. Roll it on round. Use that brush. You can see I'm using the brush to really dig in to those creases around the top. There's a good crinkle. Perfectly happy with that. Continue to rotate. Round we go. Check where we've got to. One of the things is when you get to the end of a gluey bit, do make sure you really get underneath so that there is proper gluiness at all stages. Because one of the things that might be vulnerable is if you leave air bubbles or air pockets, that's a place where in the future the tissue could easily rip. I'm also trying to make sure I get a little bit of coverage around here, and I'm going to go onto the bottom. So yeah, a little bit of glue around the bottom to just fold that in and over. Again, gives you... Watch out once the tissue is wet, of course. Once it's wet, or while it's wet, once it's dried, you'll be fine again. While it's wet, again, it is vulnerable to ripping. And our final little section. It's starting and stopping are always the sort of trickiest moments. So once I've done this once, you'll know what the score is. Making sure you get glue down into those screw thread creases as well. And as I say, I'm going to allow an overlap because I can always rotate the jar so that any ugly overlap is not visible on the shelf, or actually where I keep them is on the top of the wood burning stove, because they just look great as a display. If you've seen my videos in the past of the Halloween ones standing there, you'll know what I'm talking about. Good, so that's got us all the way round and then some, and it is perfect because I'm right at the point of this next bit of texture. So again, I'm not a sort of trim in advance, measure, do all of that kind of business. I'm just going to go for a gentle tug. No, not safe. So if I pop this down, I think we're probably fine. I'm just going to trim off the excess live on the jar. If you're somebody that likes measuring in advance, by all means, take the risk. But I always find that no matter how carefully you measure, you quite often find yourself having come up short and not having enough tissue to really get there. And again, because this tissue is so fine and because the pattern is quite random, matching up is not really an issue. If you've got a much more regular tissue, and again, watch out for these in sort of supermarkets, packs of tissues that you can make use of in crafting world as well as on your festive tables. There are some amazing designs out there, always worth looking out for. So that's very simple, gluiness. At the top, again, you can choose to fold over quite a substantial amount, but if you're going to do that, you do need to make sure you've glued it down properly, because obviously if you're putting a real candle in, which I will be, if you're putting a battery candle in, there's less of an issue. What you really don't want to have happen is any of this paper having loose ends that could in any way be a fire risk when you're lighting your candle or when your candle is lit. So make sure you trim enough off and make sure you glue down really well so that there are no extra bits of paper that are going to cause any kind of fire risk in the future. So having glued those down, I'm then again going to make sure we've really sealed that top position. I'm going to go around and just dig into those screw threads one more time. And we're gonna put some decoration around the top here, so don't worry about slight messiness, don't worry about slight creasiness. It's all good. But that's a really simple, and I promise you, when we put the cat, because you can see light through there, can't you? When we put the candle in, that is going to glow in a beautiful way. So again, just making sure it's fully glued down around the top here. And leave it to dry. Grand. I'm going to make another of those to match it. But that's already making me happy exactly as it is. So one of the things is that even when it's not lit, if you've got a pretty napkin like that, that's also an attractive object. So even when it's not lit and candle ready, I'm going to let that do some drying. Oh look, got bits sticking up at the join. Let's make sure they're glued down. You know I'm not a perfectionist with this stuff. I'll make sure that it's not a fire risk, and then any creases are fine by me. Grand. Let's add some texture to these gessoed ones, which should be nice and dry enough for that right now, and then it'll be pretty much die cutting time. So I'm aiming to put some of this sparkly Snowfall grit paste through a stencil, I think maybe a little starry stencil, feels like a nice thing to have, onto the candle jar. Going around a corner like this, I mean, I have been known to do it just holding the stencil in place, and generally once you've got some texture paste through it, you tend to find that it will sort of stay put. But I'm wondering whether it'll be a good idea, both for your benefit, so if there are people who are not sure about holding that or hands don't want to cooperate, I'm going to very lightly tape this down. I don't want to risk pulling up my gesso later, so that's a very light tack. And then round this side, I don't want solid stars on this, I think. I want to sort of have occasional stars. And then my other thought is, because I'm going white on white, so the jar is gessoed and the paste is white, I'm thinking of adding just a little bit of colour to my grit paste. So let's get a spatula out. I think we'll use just you. Putting a little bit of this on here, and I've got one of my distress re-inkers. I've got the iced spruce, which I think is going to give us a lovely icy colour. You could absolutely mix in some spray stain from a bottle. It's just the re-inker will get us more intense colour more quickly. So that's one drop of the iced spruce re-inker, and I think that's going to give me plenty. Yeah, wow, plenty. Too much, in fact. Should have gone with the other. Do I want grey stars? No, I really don't. So I'm going to see what happens if I put a bit of white paint in that. So we're really, oh, white ink maybe is better. Let's go with our bleed-proof white ink. So now we're really on experiment time. This is interesting. And you can see there's no need to panic. Just add in another ingredient. Or you could just go with your white, phew. You could go with your white starry sparkly paste to start with. I've no idea whether this will impact on the sparkliness of it, but it is giving me just a little bit more presence to that paste than it had. So let's just smooth that on through some of these sparkly stars. Because I'm going to have snowflake die cuts on standby as well. So this is just going to be a few stars. It's quite crunchy. Can you hear that going on? Definitely a crunchiness to this. So there's that. Let's just scrape back a little bit. It's quite hard to get it right into the points because it's got so much crunchy texture. There we go. That's a good starting point. Let's get up into that little corner. So that's going to be a few stars around this side. I also don't care if it isn't, you know, perfect starriness. It's going to be a hint of crackle. Not crackle. You could do it with crackle. You could absolutely do this with crackle paste. Let's see what we've got. So really careful on lifting up that masking tape because I don't want to peel away my... Ooh, look. So it's by no means perfect stenciling, but it's a lovely kind of texture on there. So around the other side, I need to let that dry. So I need to be careful about going back on around this side just to create a few more. There's still sort of plenty on here. If I can maybe get it flatter to the jar. But this is never going to be pristine. If you go with white paint, you could absolutely get a more pristine version, and maybe we'll do that. So maybe we'll have some sparkly ones, and then we'll maybe sponge on a few more precise ones to get something a bit more delicate and precise and exact. And then the other thing I'm thinking is I really want to grab a tag so that I can mop up the texture that is on here onto something else to create an interesting background texture for a future bit of playtime. There we go, coming away. So again, it's about getting some texture on, bit of detail, and we'll go in between with some other things. I really want to scrape this onto... Always worth having a bit of book page or a journal nearby so that you can do what I'm about to do and scrape these leftovers into place. And again, this is going to be a really rough, kind of edgy bit of texture. It's not going to be perfect stars, but I think it's going to do something quite interesting on there. Nice. Can't wait to see what that looks like once it's dry. Really kind of mad, grungy star texture. Do I want... See, that really needs to dry. I can't start taping things over the top of that paste until we get a bit further. But I think I do want a couple on this one. We could do the Snowfall. You see, this one calls itself Speckles, but it's perfect for sort of dripping snow. We might do that just with the grit paste without any colour mixed into it. Let's pop a little bit on here. So I'm noticing I've got some kind of under here. I'm wondering if I wipe that away before I start on the next. That might be a good plan, right? So that we start with a slightly cleaner back of stencil. Let's pop a little bit of starriness onto this jar. This one I don't think I'm going to be able to do two sides at once because it's a smaller jar, so the masking tape is going all the way around already. So we'll just go with a little bit of starriness on here. Again, I could use the heat tool to dry this paste so that I can go on to next steps. But I think given we've got lots going on, what I will probably do is just leave it to dry and come back to it later on. Just getting into a few of those stars, again, crunchy. This is real ASMR territory for anybody whose brain responds like that to those kinds of noises. Lifting up gently, because again, I don't want to... Oh, it's nice. So where this jar sort of bends in, one of those stars has got a bit lost. So I'm just gonna nurse it back to health. Again, just a little bit of added texture into there. This is playtime. This is experimenting. These are jam jars that would have been thrown out otherwise. So why not play? Grand. So those need some drying time. In the meantime, I can go and do some die cutting. Oh, and if you're using texture paste with stencils, do make sure you clean them off right away, because that is something that's going to impact on the future use of this. I'm doing another experiment to see whether I can get any of that starry glitter paste onto this tag with a spritz of water and then a flip and print, just to see if I can create a sort of partner piece to that one. I don't know whether it's going to transfer. Ooh, again, just a deliciously grungy background, and if that's got sparkle in, we'll see when it dries what kind of sparkle that's got in. That's a nice pair of mop-up tags to go with, but I'm going to go and clean off this. So I've got a bunch of die cuts from various shades of green paper, also in various sizes. So I've got some silvery green furs, I've got some bright green furs. Those are going to, yeah, kind of dangle down. I've also been putting a little bit of extra texture on here. At the moment it's pretty hard to see, but I did it without any colouring in, so I've now got a direct comparison between the two. But I'm also thinking I'd quite like a bit of colour here. I've done a bit of experimenting already with a bit of Mica shimmer spray over some texture, and I think I'm going to be bold and do it here as well. So it's the winter frost, so you want to give it a good shake to get all that lovely shimmering mica into the mix. And I'm just going to spritz it directly onto the jar. So that's quite a dark colour as it stands, but if I give it a little spritz of water and then do a bit of twizzling of the jar, and you can see how it's highlighting that texture that we've already got. We're getting a better look at some of those loose starry shapes, and you can see I've got some other starry shapes going on in here. So I used the slightly different starry stencil on the other bit, and I just free-handed that, holding it there, sticking some texture paste through with the spatula and hoping for the best, really. And you can see I've got some starry texture going on there. So this is going to keep moving in this very nice fluid way whilst I'm moving the jar. Do I want a little bit round the top? Well, I could put a little bit round the top from what's on the mat rather than spritzing again, because there's plenty dripping off, just to give myself that little bit of blue. And I think what I rather like about this is that frosty tone just in between the white. And if I do some white spatter later on, I'll get back to some white tones. But then it's just going to be a question maybe of a quick little heat gun drying moment. Oops, look, I've got blue all over my greens now. It's dripping, it's dripping. Let's get rid of that, let's get rid of that. Let's keep those because I might want to use it. So I'm going to do a little setting with the heat gun very carefully. Goggles on. And I love those sort of streaky moments. How many of those are going to survive the drying process, we'll see. So I'm doing exactly what I told you not to do. I'm holding on to the jar, but that means I can feel how hot it's getting. And at a point when I feel like it's getting too hot, then I can just call a halt and turn the heat gun off. But I think that's quite good for just highlighting the texture, but also giving us a really lovely frosty shimmer. And I think we'll find when that mica spray dries, we have got a beautiful shimmering look to it. You can see how having that colour on there highlights some of that texture, and that is also glittering texture, because that's still the Snowfall texture paste. Right, I think I'm going to pop that onto a piece of kitchen roll to carry on drying. And in the Blue Peter way I was mentioning a couple of episodes ago, there's one here that is already drying and has got most of the way there. And as you can see, it becomes more subtle as it dries. There's a little bit caught in the thread there, so we might need to hand dry that. But a sort of snowy, textured, messy, grungy. But again, I cannot tell you how magical that's going to look once it's got... I'm just dabbing away some colour from these stars so that the stars have colour around them, but not right on them. With a candle shining through it, this is going to have a special kind of grungy magic. Good, enjoying that. Might make use of some of this that's on the mat. Let's just... So I also did some mop up with these stars, the second stars that I did. So they're also on this. This is now layered 2 kinds of starry stencils. And you can see again, as that ink mica spray moves around, it just allows that texture to start to pop. Pop that to one side, dry. Actually, I might take a bit off top and bottom. There we go. And we're just creating nice grunginesses to play with in the future, getting nice and messy. And what I might do is spritz and flick some of this onto here. That creates rather a nice texture. That's again over some mop up glitter paste. And this is almost dry now, so this should give us some nice spattery shimmer here. So this is one of those sort of sessions where the stuff is on the desk. Let's just play and see what happens and see where we get to, see what comes into use. If you've been spraying a mica spray, do make sure you dry off the nozzle. And then people also recommend putting a spritz of moisture into the lid in order to help prevent clogging. So let's mop up that. Could have put it on another tag, could have put it on a journal page. All of these things are possible. There's a bit of texture paste on the mat still that is clinging to. But yeah, we're getting some nice mop-up tags into the bargain here. Things that are going to be quite exciting to play with. And as I say, once they dry, we should be able to see that they've got plenty of shimmer on them as well. So my thought with this greenery is to just create some sort of dangly greenery in addition to the greenery on these jars. Or if I feel like that, I mean, I'm just wondering whether that's even necessary on this one. I love these kind of exactly as they are at the moment. I'm going to put some twine around the top and see how that looks to me. There's a bit of trimming needed inside here so that I haven't got loose bits of paper, but that's all going rather well. And then the other thing that I was just slightly interested in maybe having in the mix is my mistletoe. So this is, again, PaperArtsy stamp set, mistletoe sketches of mine. And I think I just want to maybe I think they'd look lovely dangling in amongst that greenery. So I'm going to find some paper, stamp them, paint them. Paper lying around everywhere. Stamp them, paint them, and maybe add them into the mix. So I think I'll stamp in olive green, because that again gives me that starting point of my leaves are already going to be green, and it's fine that the berries are too. And I might see if I can fit a double onto this scrap of paper that I've just picked up from the floor. Always the way. It feels to me as though they're a bit loose. Are they going to come off? Yes, they dash it. See, I really need to do some cleaning of the backs of my stamps. Let's press that in. You're fixed. Okay. Need to clean the backs of my stamps and clean my grid blocks if I want to have nice secure stamp affixings. There we go. Oh, that's quite a dark green, isn't it? Let's try one in leaf green. And what I'm always forgetting with these mistletoe berries is to make sure I put pressure right in that middle berry to get the imprint. Let's see what they're like this, and let's leave ourselves room for maybe one more. At least one of them could stamp again. That's maybe a more interesting colour. I've done it again, so I'm going to sort of line that up with where I can see it and press right down in that middle bit, and there they are. I'm going to do the same again here, line it up and just press the bit that I think I missed. It's an improvement. Good. So a little bit of quick painting of those, which I could do with paint, I could do with ink, I could do with watercolour. I've got these sprays right here, so there's absolutely nothing stopping me taking a little bit of Mowed Lawn, putting that there, and a little bit of the Rustic Wilderness Oxide and popping that there. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is I know that those are the colours on these leaves because they're what I sprayed the paper with, so it will give me something that's going to match quite nicely if I use a little bit of the Mowed Lawn and a little bit of the Rustic Wilderness. And I'm going to keep it quite loose and quite soft because after all I'm going to cut these out. And let's take the Mowed Lawn down the stem. Mistletoe does have a lovely brightness to it, so this doesn't need to be dark and gloomy. And I'm not sure at the moment whether I'm going to need the large one or the small one, or maybe one of each. Let's put a little bit of, so I'm gonna use the slightly darker Rustic Wilderness in the center of those leaves to just give them a bit of depth, and in that little knot there and that little knot there, and then the lighter one, the Mowed Lawn, coming around the edges. You could absolutely do this with distress watercolour pencils if that's what you've got. Use any colour medium you've got for these little games. I quite like the little white edging there. That's just going to make those show up. And then for the berries, that leaf's got a bit out of control. For the berries, I think it might be quite nice to have that same winter frost we've just been using. So I'm just going to put a little spritz of that. So this is the Mica spray, and again, make sure you clean out that nozzle if you've spritzed a Mica spray. And I'm just going to use a little bit of that, watered down, so this is a water brush I'm using, to just put a little bit of shading on these berries. A little touch of dimensional shading, and whether in the background they could be properly blue. There's a little one tucked behind there, just to give us that touch of dimension, touch of interest, touch of detail. And I'm going to go in with a dot into each of these berry tips. We did a lot of berry painting in Watercolour Wednesday just recently, so if you want to see more detailed tips on watercolouring more carefully than I'm watercolouring at the moment, then take a look at that video from Wednesday. That I think is quite nice. Very simple little bit of painting. And now for a bit of slightly less simple but still doable fussy cutting. I'm going to keep a bit of a rim around these, and what I generally do is I'll take a loose cut around the whole thing, then I'll take a slightly closer cut in around the edge pieces that are easy to get to. And the most helpful thing I ever heard about fussy cutting was move the paper, not the scissors. I may be preaching to fussy cutting experts, but moving the paper, not the scissors, has always seemed to me to be the thing that I have found most helpful in getting a decent fussy cut done. So yes, I'll do a loose cut around the whole of an image, something like this. As I say, not getting into the belly of the beast yet, not going right into those areas that need me to focus. Get the loose cut done first. Like so. And then I can go back in and take myself around some of these innards. Be as precise or as not precise as you want. I'm being fairly loose with this one because if it's going to dangle in midair, I don't want it too flimsy. So particularly on, for instance, a stalk like this one, I want to give it quite a large margin either side, because otherwise that leaf is going to find itself very vulnerable in the long run. So I'm not going to make this a fussy cutting tutorial, but I just wanted you to see that there are no shortcuts for me either. It's just a question of, is it worth it to you for the end effect to spend this bit of time cutting around your image? And to me it definitely is worth it. So this would obviously also work as a little adornment on a card, on a tag, anything like that. But we're gonna be affixing it around the tops of these jars with some twine and a touch of little glue. So that's the game, still to be played. And I'm looking forward to finishing off these jars with you. Final stages will be our toppings. I'm just creating little bundles of greenery that you saw me start to put together, just to show you why I think it's worth doing some fussy cutting occasionally. And I'm now kind of, yeah, making sure these will stay together by putting little dabs of glue where required. I haven't quite decided the order of this one, so I might need to mess around just a little bit to get myself happy with what's going on. This is for quite a large jar. This one's going to be on the smaller jar, so I think I probably want quite a good bundle of greenery, something like that maybe. Also because this mistletoe sprig is quite substantial, so it's quite nice for it to have something substantial going on behind it. So again, just my Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue. Any acrylic glue will do. One of the reasons I love this one is it has got that lovely narrow applicator, which means I can control what goes where quite well. Good, yeah, I think we might put that one just at the back. And as I was saying, these little bundles will obviously work beautifully on a tag or a card. That's, I mean, I'm quite tempted to go away and do one of those immediately, just for the fun of it. These are some of the mop-up tags still sitting here waiting now patiently for their next go. But in the meantime, what we want to do is get these attached to here. So I want to pick a sort of front. I'm loving, there is a delicious sparkle on lots of these stars. Interestingly, where we spritzed the uncolour mixed grit paste Snowfall grit paste, took a lot more colour than the one that had been pre-coloured. Don't ask me. I guess it maybe had something more absorbent in it, because this one did have some of the white ink, so maybe that resisted that. I think I quite like the place where the two sets of stars combine, so I don't want to cover that up too much. So maybe what we do is hang our greenery somewhere down in between. And I think probably what it's going to take is both some glue, but also the main other thing that I always like to do my topping with, which is to wrap some twine around this screw thread part. Where's the end of my twine? There's the end of my twine. So I'm going to leave enough to be able to tie a knot, and then I'm going to take it a couple of times round. This is easier done when I'm not trying to show you on camera, because I can pick it up and do it at exactly the angle I want, and it takes a matter of seconds, but trying to hold it so that the camera can see what I'm doing, it gives it a whole new adventure. I have done Halloween ones with rusty wire, with garden wire, with all that kind of thing. I think I may have done a couple of festive ones with garden wire as well, but for a sort of rustic natural look, fine twine will probably always win the day for me. And then it's just a simple knot at the top. Now all this paper obviously remains flammable, so again, if you're lighting real candles, just please be careful with matches. We used to have these safety warnings at school in the UK, little films they would play to warn us of playing with matches or other really dangerous scenarios that you might get into. There was one horrendous public warning film set on a farm with a bunch of kids playing, and one by one they all died, and then they ripped their name tags off the hooks at the school. It stuck with me, as you can tell. So as a warning film, clearly effective propaganda. I'm gonna just trim that very top bit again, just so I haven't got paper showing where I'm going to be putting maybe a lighted flame in and out of that little. That's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, that's going to look great on a shelf, on a fireplace, on a hearth, and as I say, at the end I'm going to light them. So this one I kept very, very simple. I had a little play with what I thought I might want on these, and I do just love this jar exactly as it is. So these are some wooden snowflakes that I bought in a dollar store. You could, of course, die cut snowflakes. I have done that in the past. But since I've got the wooden ones, why not use them? So all I did was grab a little bit of mummy cloth, kind of a rectangle of mummy cloth that I then had a lovely time ripping to shreds. Why can I not make the scissors work this morning? What's going on? There we go. So a little tug to just really loosen those threads and give us lots of lovely texture. Again, picking the place I want as the front. I'm going to let those threads go horizontally rather than vertically. Again, just watching out for any time I might have a flame, sorry, brain not operating, because I was remembering that I think I wrapped my twine round first. So here we go again. See how it goes off camera because I'm leaning it against my body. I did it the way I wanted to do it that time, and yeah, off camera we were. So that's one knot in here. Simple knot just through the beginning of how you would tie your shoelaces, if people do such things anymore. In fact, I think maybe I did a double knot behind to secure it nice and tight. Then I put down this and went around it with another knot. So, and again, I'm just going to tug that so that it's not sticking up over the top of the jar. Trim those to a length that seems good. Maybe a little bit more off you. And then these do have little stickers on the back, but it's so many years since I bought them that there's virtually no stickability left, even when you peel the label off. So I have added an extra dot of glue to that. And then I left it overnight. Yes, we've come back the next morning. I couldn't remember which top I was wearing yesterday, so if I've changed my sleeves, forgive me. So I'm going to leave that to do the same. And then the last thing I thought might be nice was to either put a little bit of the grit paste Snowfall, could go on here, or some of the glitter that we were using, the dry glitter. We could do Snowfall. I think it's probably going to be easier to get some more glitter around the place. There it is. So a little bit more Distress Collage Medium or any glue straight onto that snowflake, making sure I get to the ends. Like so. You need a little bit of paper so that the glitter can fall on and be collected. Are you large enough? Grabbing pieces of paper nearby. No, not sort of big enough. Oh, I should be able to direct my glitter. Sorry, I've got a paintbrush in my mouth now. Let's do that. Tap it off. And there we have sparkles for days. Sparkles for days. With that there, let's tip this back in. So I'm just going to finish off myself by sticking that onto our smaller jar, putting a bit more glitter on that final snowflake, and then I'll dive in as promised for a close-up, and I'll bring in some of the other wintry jars that I've made in the past and like those too. So we'll finish off with a little candlelit extravaganza. Thank you as always for your company today. It's a delight to have you with me on this creative journey. If you've enjoyed today, do give me a thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed, it would be grand to have you along for the adventure. Thanks so much for watching, and happy crafting all.